In this video, I'm going to show you my 3-step process, how to mix your beats and have them sound professional. Going from this to something like this. I use Logic Pro to make my beats and to mix my beats, but it doesn't matter what software, what DAW you're using. And if you stick around to the end, I got a gift for you. So what is mixing? So a few years ago, right at the beginning when I was just making beats and doing studio sessions, I noticed that every single time I played a beat that I spent hours making and definitely sounded good, the idea was good, I'd press play, they just wouldn't sound as good as when another producer hit play on their beat. The artist would just always say, next, skip, they just weren't feeling it. But I noticed whenever I pressed play on a collab beat that I did with another producer who finished it off and mixed the beat, immediately the artist would perk up and be like, yeah, let's choose this one. And that was just all down to the mix. The beat sounded way better in the speakers and immediately it just inspired the vibe. So mixing for me is a crucial step when it comes to making beats. It's the process we go through to make your song sound the best that it can. It involves essentially putting all your layers together and making them sound cohesive. So when we press play, it sounds really, really good. The process that I do to mix my beats nowadays, it doesn't really take too long. It's quite simple to do. Now, just before we jump into the mix, one thing to be aware of is your environment of where you're mixing the beat. Right now, I'm in my home studio and it's really, really echoey. Even though I've got these amazing studio monitors, these are the Adam A7Xs. I don't use these to mix my beats just because the echo is just crazy. It's not gonna sound good. Ideally, you wanna have a nice soundproofed room or studio. I did notice when I was mixing my beats in my old studio, they were hitting way harder just because the acoustics was perfect. But we don't always have access to that. We've got to use what we've got. Sometimes I use these DT99 Pros, and sometimes I use some III headphones as well. So step one, let's organize all of our sound. For hip hop beats like trap and drill, I personally like to have my melodies at the top and then my 808s and my kick at the bottom. I also like to have them in a group together. So for my melodies, I select everything and I'm gonna create a track stack. You can have it in a folder. I choose to have it in a summing stack. So if I want to, I can apply effects to all of my melody at the same time. And then I'm gonna do the same thing for my drums, but I'm gonna leave out my 808 and my kick. Having them in a summing track is just sending them all to the same bus, which is gonna be super useful soon. Also got everything labeled at the side, just to make it easy for me to identify what is what. Now that we got the organization out the way, we can move on to step 2, which is really, really crucial. We're gonna start to level our beat out and clean everything up. So here we're just gonna remove unwanted frequencies and any click sounds or anything that we don't want. When I was listening to my beat, I noticed there's a click sound in my 808. So I'm actually just gonna fade out the ending a little bit. When it comes to my track, I like to think of it as a box full of frequencies. We've got low frequencies, which is usually the bass. We've got high frequencies, which is like hi-hats. And in the middle is like the melodies, the pianos, the voice. And we want to try and fill up the spectrum as much as possible. Some sounds, they take up the frequency nicely, but some sounds are going to overlap. If they overlap too much, then that's when things can sound muddy. And that's where we want to go ahead and carve out space with our EQ. So for example, I've got my hi-hat sound here. That's taking up the high frequencies. And then I got my clap. Now it's taken up most of the mid frequencies, but it's also got a lot of low end that I probably won't need. I don't need all of that. I just want to try and focus on the mids. And cleaning up this low frequency section, that's going to give us more space for the bass. Usually I go through my sounds and comb it through with EQ. But with some sounds, you have to be careful because, for example, I've got this snare stomp sound. It's got some low end. I don't want to take out too much though, because that's the character of this sound. I do want it to have some low end. So you just got to really hear and use your ears and figure out where you want to carve out. So let's start with leveling out our melody. Usually as I'm making a beat, I'm leveling as I go along, but here we're just going to do it from the beginning. So the main part of my melody is the piano. That's going to be the main sound. I'm going to take out a little bit of low end, but not too much. And then we got the keys. Now this is hitting in the same kind of frequencies, which means it's going to overlap, which is also fine because that's the creative style that we're going for. There's ways that we can get it working together, so I can use a little bit of reverb to just drown out that second sound, maybe even just turn it down a little bit. I think that works. Let's add in our flute. I want that to be more in the high end. So I'm going to take out a lot of that low end. Because this sound is my lead, I really do want it to stand out. And to do this, we can use a technique called panning. So back in the day, when bands and musicians used to record to tape, within the recording room, the musicians used to play in different positions. So for example, the drummer would be in the middle, but even his hi-hats might be slightly off to the right, and then maybe the open hat to the left. And next to the drummer, perhaps the guitarist was maybe even more to the left, maybe even, let's say, a violin player was to the right. And this is what made the recording sound stereo. So with panning, we're doing the same thing. We're creating the illusion of space and making things sound wider. But also this helps with clashing frequencies. So when we listen back, we can hear two different instruments rather than it just sound all together and all kind of muddy. So with my flute, I might just pan it slightly to the right. I've got the halftime flute on the left, but I'm actually just gonna turn this down even more. And it's a background sound, so let's just drown it out with a bit more reverb. So I got this crazy transition effect in here. I'm actually going to take out some more lows because I really just want the highs in here. This is more of just a creative decision. I'm going to turn it down as well. And then I want to add some delay and some reverb to this. When it comes to your effects in the train, by the way, the order does matter. So usually you want to have your EQs and stuff at the top. Then you could put in your creative kind of effects like delays and stuff, and then your reverb at the bottom. But also this is a creative choice. So you can mess around with the orders and see what works best for you. And then the last part is my drone. Just turn it up a little bit. It's just a background sound, just to fill out the frequencies. I'm happy with my melody, that sounds good. Let's move on to the drums. Later in this video, I'm going to show you what I throw in my master channel to really get my beats hitting hard. But before we get into that, I want to show you how to level out your drums so it's ready to start knocking. And within my beat, I like my drums to be slightly louder than the melody. That's like the thing that I want to feel the most. So I'm going to start with my 808. Now I know some people mix according to numbers. So for example, they want their 808 hitting at a certain dB. But what I try and do is just make sure that it's not in the red. So we have space for the effect that's going to make it hit hard. And if I have a kick, then I'm just going to turn up the kick. I want my kick to be just slightly louder than my 808. Next I'll move on to my main clap, and I want that to be quite loud. Then my hi-hats, which I want to be loud but not as loud as my clap. So I'll just adjust. That's sounding good to me. Then I want to listen to like my open hats and stuff. Right now they're a bit loud. And then the percussion, which again I want to be a little bit lower than my claps. As you can see, I've got some stuff panned to the left and panned to the right just to give it that wider dimension. Also, with your 808, with your bass line, switch it from stereo to mono, and just this simple thing is actually just going to make it hit a little bit harder. So now we're sounding like this. That sounds way better. So now we've got our drums leveled and our melody leveled. Let's just play it all together and hear how that sounds in context with each other. And just use your ears to adjust to how you like it. Now we've done that crucial step of leveling out all our sound, we can start adding effects to really make our drums hit hard. So the reason why I put all my drums stacked up in a bus is so I can add some effects to it. And one thing that I do like to do is add in a plugin by Soundtoys called Decapitator. What this does is just add a little bit of saturation. So if I play my drums, if we turn the drive all the way up, it's actually making it sound a little bit gritty. I don't want to put the drive too high though, let's turn it down. Just makes everything hit a bit hard. So now on our master channel, first thing I like to do is just take out some of that low end, just a tiny bit right at the end, and some high end right at the beginning, because we don't really need any of that super high end bleeding out. Our ears won't even hear past that anyway. And then also I like to just do a little EQ boost here. Then personally, I like to add in the tiniest of reverb. I'm going to add in an A plate from Vintage Verb and literally just turn it all the way down and then adjust upwards. Too much, it starts to make your beat sound a little bit weird. But with just a little bit, it just adds in a little bit of crypt. And then just for some more subtle highs, I'm going to use a free plugin by Slate Digital. It's called Fresh Air. And I'm just going to add some high air in there. If you put it all the way up, you can hear the difference. Things sound really, really crisp, but I don't want too much high air, just a little bit. Now, I know there's a myth that FL Studio hits way harder than beats made in Logic Pro X, and I think the reason why is because on the master channel on FL Studio, it comes with a plugin called the Soft Clipper, and when you put that on, it makes everything hit really hard. In Logic Pro X, there isn't one on the master, so we're going to manually add that. One that I found that works really, really well is the TR5 Classic Clipper. By using the clipper, we're going to allow our beat to be effectively louder, but without the harshness at the top. And that's the sound that we've become really, really accustomed to when we're hearing those hard 808s in trap beats these days. They all got the Soft Clipper sound on it, and that's kind of like the standard right now. I'm just going to leave it in default. You see if I turn it up, it does hit harder, but it also gets very kind of muddled. So just adjust to your liking. There's a lot more stuff you could add to your master channel. Again, it's kind of just down on preference and how you want your beat to sound. They also got an AI mastering tool which analyzes your beat around what you got, but sometimes I feel like it levels up my beat too much, whereas I want the bass to hit way harder than the melody. Awesome. So now you got your beat to a point that you like. It's always nice to go and reference it. So play it in your AirPods or play it on your phone, play it in your car, see if it's still hitting how you're hearing it in your DAW. And the more you do this, the better you're gonna get at mixing your beats and hearing where you want it to get to. And if you've made it all the way to the end, remember in the beginning I said I have a gift for you. I have a few different templates for my master channel. I'm going to leave all of them in the description below. You can go ahead and download them for free. They're definitely going to enhance your beats, and you can tweak them to your liking to get them hitting exactly how you want them to.